In the high stakes worlds of law and commerce, partnerships and understanding are critical, yet gaps remain between these interconnected fields. Join us as we sit down with industry leaders to highlight how collaboration can make impact. This is Bridging the Gap. Our guest today is trial prosecutor and law school coach, attorney Kymberly Porter. After graduating from the University of South Alabama with a degree in political science, Kymberly pursued her childhood dream of becoming a lawyer, and by attending Faulkner University's Thomas Goode Jones School of Law. Kymberly was designated as a standout during her first year of law school, being awarded Most Outstanding First Year Student. During law school, Kymberly excelled academically, making the dean's list her first year and graduating ranked number 12 in her class. She also took on leadership roles, serving as executive editor for the Law Review and treasurer and vice president of the Black Law Students Association. Kymberly leveraged her strengths to support her peers, leading exam review sessions and tutoring struggling students. She also competed in multiple mock trial competitions in various parts of the country as a member of the Board of Advocates. Her trial skills earned her an Outstanding Advocate Award in a mock trial competition. While balancing school and raising her daughter as a single mom, Kymberly persevered, earning her Juris Doctor and Master's in Dispute Resolution. After passing the bar exam, she was hired as an assistant district attorney. Driven by her law school successes and challenges, Kymberly founded the Porter Solution, drawing on her experience to provide coaching and guidance to law students facing similar obstacles. Please welcome attorney Kymberly Porter.
Hey,
how are you?
Thank you. How are you?
That was a mouthful. You are Black Excellence, and I'm so happy to do this episode here with you tonight. To note, at the time of this taping, this is post the infamous Harriet Tubman boat brawl in Alabama, of which that is where you do practice.
Yes.
I don't believe it was in the same city or county as where you practice, but I can imagine it's the talk of the town.
That is true. It is the same city where I went to law school. So I spent 3 years there. And yes, it is still the talk of the town, even here in Tuscaloosa. I've had quite a few of my colleagues who don't look like me ask me about it. And so it's been quite interesting.
And unofficially, are you able to say, if you were the prosecutor assigned to this case, what would you do? Would charges be dropped and it would be mutual combat? Or, you're in a tough position, what I'm saying, as a prosecutor watching this unfold, because it went from defense of others to just downright brawl.
It did. I will say that it is one of those situations where it's interesting that as things unfold and time passes, more, clips surface in social media. And so you get to see different angles, different parts of the whole incident. And to me, I think that if I were the prosecutor, I would take each case as it comes rather than dealing with it as a whole. I would deal with each person and that person's involvement, whether it was defense of others or whether it was self-defense or whether it was just, I'm going to take part because there's a lot of stuff going on. I would probably take each one by itself rather than just as a whole, because I don't know, man, that's the way I was raised. I was not raised that you get to do what everybody else is doing because everybody else is doing it. I mean, my mom was like everybody else, mom. If everyone else jumps off a bridge, will you do it too? That is how it goes. And so I am one for holding each person accountable for their actions, reactions, and non-actions. And so that's probably how I would handle the situation.
Mm-hmm. And I just want to note, it's a tough situation to be in once you are barred, right? Because we have our natural emotional response to, oh my gosh, my people are in trouble. Let me hop in here and mollywop some folks, versus I took an oath to uphold the law and I cannot be biased.
Right, exactly. And that, to me, that is the most important thing, is that it is my job to uphold the law as it is, not as I would hope for it to be, as I wish it were. If that were the case, then perhaps I'd be a lobbyist or some other politician, but that's not what my job is. That's not what I'm doing. And so I have to uphold the law as it is, sans emotion. And so that is often difficult. In fact, it's one of those things that comes up more often than you might think, just in the day-to-day prosecution world.
Yeah, exactly. The first thing they teach us is, law does not have emotion. And so you've got to remove that. And it's hard, especially, you're in a position where you're a leader in your community and the community expects certain results. And sometimes you just legally cannot deliver those results. So we just want to make it perfectly clear to everyone that watches this video. That does not mean that neither one of us love Black people. It's just we have more power and purpose by keeping our credentials. We can help you more by keeping our credentials. And it's very important for everyone to understand that before they attack Black attorneys for upholding the law. The more you know. All right,
Yes.
let's get into the show. Pre-law. So, what made you decide to pursue a career in law? And how did you know it was the right path for you?
So as you mentioned in my bio, I've always wanted to be an attorney since I was a child. And I don't have any particularly nostalgic reason growing up watching Matlock or whatever. Yeah, I watched the shows, I watched Perry Mason and all of that, but it wasn't really that for me. It was just one of those things I was always drawn to. And because it came from my childhood, by the time I reached adulthood, I honestly did not know if I could do it or not. I knew that I wanted to be a lawyer, but I also knew that law school is hard. It takes a whole lot. And I really and truly did not know if I had what it took, because I have always been intelligent, but I spent quite a few years being academically lazy. And so looking at my undergrad GPA, my high school GPA even, you would never even guess that I was intelligent. Not that I was failing, I just was middling, really, really in the middle. I literally was like, okay, what can I do to not fail and not be in trouble at home? That's what I'm gonna do, rather than actually working to my potential. And so because of that, I didn't know what my potential truly was, because I never really gave it my all and tried really hard. And so for the longest, I didn't know if I could do it. And I honestly did not know that that was what I should do until I literally got multiple green lights and a little bit of uncomfortable nudging from God. Different people have different beliefs. And so this is not in any way a push of my belief system on anyone else's, but this is just my story. I had, like I said, always wanted to be an attorney. And so when I graduated from undergrad, I was working full time. And then I got a promotion. And so I continued to work full time, but I still wanted to be a lawyer. And so I went ahead and I took the LSAT. And I was like, okay, we'll do this sometime. I'm just going to, piecemeal my way there and take it a step at a time. Well, after I took the LSAT, I kept working, even though I felt the urging to go to law school. And it's just hard to quit. It's hard to quit working, especially when you're in a position that I was in. I was a single mom. And it was just one of those things where it's like, man, I need this income. And then literally just out of the blue one day, I get to work and find out that the company that I work for is closing. In fact, the company told the media before they told its employees, because that's how classy they are. And so it was just panic. And I was like, oh crap, what am I going to do? Then I realized, I'm like, okay, well, this is the perfect time. I've got to move because my job had just recently moved me to a different state for work. And so I was there with no family or anything. And so I couldn't stay because I didn't have a job. And so I'm like, okay, I've got to move and I've got to start over somehow. I may as well give it a try. And so that's what I did. I literally went to, I started researching, trying to figure out, okay, where could I go that I would still be able to be within driving distance to my family. I found Faulkner Law, and my family is in Mobile, Alabama. Faulkner is about 2.5 hours from there. And so I was like, okay, let me go and visit this school. And so they had an open house coming up. I set everything up. I got a babysitter, found somewhere to stay in Montgomery for the weekend, had the whole thing planned. And then they canceled the open house. And so I was like, okay, well, I've already set all this up. So I called them and they were like, well, yeah, you can still come. We just won't have all of the activities that we had planned, but we'll still give you a tour. We'll set you up with one of the 3Ls that can show you around the city, etc. And so I was like, okay, great. So I did that. I went, had not applied. I just wanted to check it out. Within that weekend, I was unofficially offered a scholarship. Once again, I had not yet applied. I found an apartment complex that was willing to accept my application with no application fee, hold my apartment until the upcoming August. It was June, May-ish at this point. And they required no down payment, no security deposit, nothing. All I needed to do was pay the prorated rent once I got there. Not to mention, this was a really, really, really nice apartment complex, gated and in the good part of town because my baby got to have somewhere good to go to school type of apartment complex. And it was just thing after thing after thing. And I'm like, man, this is too much favor to not be God. And so I went. And once I got there, the favor continued, honestly.
That's awesome. I wish I had a clip of, the look at God and then inserted that right now, but I don't have one.
Yes.
I appreciate how thorough you were with that because there are people that are planners, like myself. I did a lot of planning before attending an ABA school. And so I do appreciate, you being so honest, transparent, and just showing that you planned because there's nothing wrong with preparation. And because you had that preparation, everything just fell into place,
Yeah. Yeah.
So what advice would you give a pre-law student about how to best prepare for law school?
I would say the very first thing is save as much money as you possibly can. Like, whatever you think is the nest egg you'll need to survive for 3 years without working or without working much, save that and double it and save that again. That's what I would say is the very first thing, because one of the hardest things about law school is that life doesn't stop just because you're in law school. And oftentimes financial hardships and things that you need to purchase, things that you need to do that will cost you financially, those things can kind of make or break you. And it's unnecessary stress if you're able to save that ahead of time. Not only that, but I've found that the difference between some law students who do really well and make it through law school and some that don't is that the ones that did not have access to resources that had they had the money, had they been able to afford it, they could have had. So the very first thing I would say is save your money. Make sure you're financially able to pay for all of the things that you're going to need throughout law school. Once that is done, then I would say start building you a list. Where do you want to go to law school? What things are important to you? And then you can start on the normal journey of trying to go to law school, the making the LSAT that you need, making sure you do your personal statement and you have the perfect thing and your package is good to go, those types of things. But number one is definitely saving your money.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to law school. Now, your coach You graduated 12th. So, what study habits or tips do you recommend for excelling in law school classes?
I recommend that each person find what works for them. And I know that seems to not necessarily answer the question directly, but it's 100% true. And the reason that I say that is because I am a law school coach and I did graduate number 12. And the students that I've worked with have graduated number 3, number 4. And all 3 of us study different, those particular students that I'm referring to. Then I have a couple of students that are somewhere in the middle of their class. They also study differently. And so it just depends on you and how you study. I'd say the very first thing is to know what works for you and make sure you do that and don't stop doing that. Oftentimes people get complacent. Don't get complacent. Don't let your habits slip. Make sure you find what works for you and stick to it. Now, obviously, there are many different types of studying, study techniques, study devices. Whichever one you decide to pick, definitely pick something and definitely stick with it, is what I would say.
Mhm. And we'll get into this more as we talk about, the Porter solution, but I did want to say that you're really great about using a tool to assess each one of your students' um, primary like learning styles, and then catering, their curriculum towards that, or advising them, here's how you learn best based on these results. And so I just wanted to dive in more just briefly as a sidebar with that, so that we're so ambiguous with terms sometimes, right? We use this imposter syndrome and we're like, well, what does that mean exactly? And so it's like, well, figure out what works best for you. Well, what does that mean exactly? Well, specifically, you can actually take a test to find out what works best for you. So,
That's precisely it. That is it. And oftentimes that test will give you a place to start. And then after you've gotten your place to start, certainly talk to someone, do more research, what have you, to dig into the types of study devices that are best suited to whatever that learning style is, for sure.
awesome. Okay. We've already humble bragged and flexed enough, right? Does class ranking really matter for finding a job after graduation?
Well, I will give you the most lawyer answer I possibly can. It depends. Because it truly does. It really depends on what job you want and what you're trying to do. If you're trying to go big law and you want to make all of the money and be rolling in the dough, baby, you better be at the top of somebody's class, because that's just what it takes. It takes either being at the very top of somebody's class and knowing someone, or being very, very well connected. And so if that's the type of job you're looking for post graduation, you're definitely going to want to make sure you have the grades and the resume that can get you there. However, on the flip side, if you are looking to work in public service, normally they are not nearly as concerned with your GPA and much more concerned with what you can do practically and what you have done practically. So it really just depends on the type of job that you are looking for. I will also just note as an aside, all of the big names, civil rights groups, you can count those as big law. If you want to work for the ACLU or the Southern Poverty Law Center, what have you, or even EJI, that's here in Alabama, Innocence Project, there are plenty of them. All of these civil rights, human rights type groups, they are normally going to be looking for the cream of the crop. So you're going to need to not only make sure that you have top tier GPA, but also have done some work that tends towards that type of interest.
Okay, I've never heard anyone say that before. Thank you so much. And it makes sense when you look at their 990s and the amount of assets they have, they're giving Big Law for sure. But I think from a branding and marketing perspective, we're still thinking, oh, they're here to help us.
Well, yeah, and it is. They are very much so on the face of it. We're here for the little guy, but they ain't hiring the little guy. They're just not. They
Yeah.
are, if you look at the people, just go to their website and look at the people that work for them, even down to their interns, and look at their pedigree. We're talking Ivy League, top 10, top 14, easy. So it's definitely one of those things that people don't realize it, and until you go to apply and they're like, no, that's cute. Just write a letter, give a donation. No thanks. So
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. Okay. What extracurriculars or clinics do you recommend law students get involved in?
So I would say something that matches what you want to do post graduation. If you want to litigate and you know you want to litigate, whether it be criminal or civil, you've got to do some trial advocacy. Because I can just tell you that once you graduate and actually get a job, nobody's teaching you how to try a case. They're just not. You might get to watch a couple if you're lucky before you have to try one. But for the most part, they're handing you a stack of files and you trying cases. It's not just, it's just not feasible for them to dedicate the type of resources that are necessary to actually teach you how to try a case. So if you want to litigate, do trial ad, do some sort of mock trial, those types of things. If you know that you want to do some sort of transaction work, I would suggest clinics that tend towards that a little bit more. There are estate law clinics that generally do that, elder law clinics, where you're not necessarily in court. Instead, you're helping the elderly to fill out forms and type up documents, or you may be helping for them to draft a will or what have you. And so those are going to give you drafting more of the drafting practice that you need and things of that nature. So I think it depends on what you want to do post graduation.
Definitely. Okay, moving on to mental health. What advice would you have for law students about avoiding burnout and staying grounded?
So number one thing is to be very, very intentional about your mental health. Be intentional about taking time for yourself and making sure that you are not just grinding it out, never resting, never taking time to actually just sit and do something non-law school related. And the reason I say this is because just law school, the very nature of law school is incredibly competitive and stress inducing. So much so that if you take a look at the statistics, I don't recall the exact numbers offhand, but essentially, there is a large percentage of students who start law school perfectly healthy, perfectly fine, but they end law school with some form of mental health issue or some form of substance abuse issue. The numbers are there. It's literally just the nature of law school. And so I'll say personally, I started law school 100% fine. I now suffer from mild anxiety and depression. It is 100% law school, and it is not situational for me. It is not just, oh man, I had a tough day, and so now I feel these things. It's not. And it's not something that you necessarily just grow out of and it goes away, which is why it's most important to stop it before it begins. And you can only do that by making sure you're intentional about it. What I mean is schedule me time. What I mean is schedule time to actually go and sit and talk to a therapist. You're overwhelmed. If you're in law school, you're overwhelmed. You just are. You may not say it, you may not want to admit it, but you are. And that overwhelm can quickly turn to burnout. It can quickly turn to anxiety. And so the best way to tackle that is to hit it head first and acknowledge it and deal with it in ways that actually fit you. So that's what I would say.
Okay. And, there are various resources out there, various organizations run by attorneys who have hit rock bottom, right? And had to admit they had a problem and get themselves back on their feet. So we just also want to highlight that, if you really do need some help, one, you can also hire Attorney Porter as your coach and she will whip you into shape. Two, you can, research those various mental health facilities and organizations for attorneys. Okay. Networking and career. How important is networking for career development in the legal field?
Well, I'm sure you've heard the old saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. It's true. It is very, very true. Networking is huge because the legal field is oversaturated. It has been for probably decades at this point, honestly. And because it's oversaturated, it really is important to make those connections, and not just superficial connections, genuine connections, because when people remember you and they remember you for who you are, that is when they are more likely to pass your name along or give you insight into possible opportunities, things of that nature. And so, and at this point, I am sure that it seems like I have a story for everything. I swear, probably not everything, just a lot of things. But what I will say is from my personal experience, I clerked for a state judge, circuit court, and I received that clerkship. I should not say received that clerkship. I received the opportunity to apply for that clerkship simply because of the network that I had built. It was not an open application where, it's just on Indeed and whoever wants to can apply. It was not that type of party. Not only that, I also clerked at a very, very popular firm in Montgomery. It is one of those where it's big law for Alabama, if that makes sense at all. Like, it is a big name firm that everybody knows here, and there are offices in multiple locations, and their attorneys get paid the big bucks, et cetera, et cetera. And I was able to get the opportunity to apply for that as well, simply because of my reputation and the network that I had built. Once again, not an open application type deal. It was not like they have a clerkship that is open application for their summer clerks. That was not the program that I was in. I actually clerked for them all throughout an entire school year. And it was simply because of that network. And not only that, but even getting that position, it was a very interesting ordeal, because one day I checked my email and the email essentially was copied to me and 4 other people. And the email essentially said, hey, there's this job available and you're on the short list to be able to apply for this job. First of all, I didn't know the job was available. Second of all, I didn't know there was a short list. Third of all, how did I end up on this short list? What are y'all talking about? That was literally my reaction to that whole thing, but it really and truly was because of the network that I had built. And then even beyond law school, the job I have now, actually, all 3 of the jobs that I have now are because of networking. As you've mentioned already, I'm a prosecutor. That's my day job. I also teach criminal law for the undergraduate students at the University of Alabama. That job I got through networking. There was not a posting that I just went and found and applied to. I also am teaching evidence at Faulkner Law School. Clearly one of a networking thing, because that's the school I went to. But I did not know that the position was even available or that they were even looking for someone, except that my professor, one of my old professors, reached out to me and said, "Hey, there's this position and I think you'd be perfect for it." So I cannot talk highly enough about networking and making sure that you have a reputation that is above reproach.
And it doesn't hurt being number 12. Okay.
Well, that's true. That's true.
Okay. Moving on to the future of law. Let's see here. Beyond just reacting to changes, how can attorneys and the legal field proactively shape the future of the profession?
I think that if you would like to shape the future of the profession, you're going to have to be the change you want to see. So whatever that looks like is what you're going to need to do. So for example, there is a fairly new organization here in Alabama called the Black Women Lawyers Association. And it's obviously, it's an affinity bar, and it is for Black women. But that's because there was not such a group before. There was obviously, you got your state bar association, and then there were some local bar associations, of course, within each of the different jurisdictions. And then you even had your Black bar associations. Of course, they ain't called that, but that's what they are. They're affinity bars as well. And it's pretty much for the Black lawyers. And you have those. But there was not something that was specifically for Black women attorneys. And so it was created about 3 or 4 years ago. Those are the types of things that you'll have to do. If there is a need that you see, for example, scholarship need. There's a certain type of student that you're like, man, this student has it really hard and nobody's really looking out for them. You're going to have to create that opportunity for them. You're not going to be able to just sit around and wish and hope that it would change. Same thing with wanting to create different lanes to be a lawyer in. So there is a colleague of mine, Cameron Buckner, really great. She's very, very kind, very, very smart, very, very accomplished. She is a licensed attorney and an influencer. And she has carved out her niche. And essentially what she does is not only helps other influencers to know what they're getting into as far as contracts and all of those things, but she shows other lawyers how to do the same thing, how they can be more influencer in the social media world and all of that. That's something that 10 years ago did not exist. It just wasn't a thing. But it is now. And not at all to say that she's the first, but my point is that if there is something that you want to do or something that you wish was out there, you're going to just have to create it.
Yeah, and I say that with an asterisk, right? Because we had the one woman who had to resign from her big law job in New York because
Yes.
someone complained about it, and there was no conflict of interest. And so, you got to do what your pocket can handle. And clearly her pocket could handle that influencer money because she said, see ya, to the big law
Right.
job and was like, I'm going to do me.
Right.
Okay, bridging the gap. In your experience, what misunderstandings exist between law and other professions, and how can mutual understanding be improved?
I think the first thing that people need to realize is that there is law in literally everything we do. Like every single thing that happens in this world, some law, regulation, statute, ordinance, etc., touches that. And once that is understood, then we have to think, okay, now how can I help this field with my knowledge of whatever law it is? And I think the fields would need to be more receptive to that. Now, obviously, that is something that I don't say just broadly or in a cavalier manner. It is one of those things that I say fully accepting that it is our responsibility as lawyers to be a bit more relatable, a bit more down to earth, and understand that the way that we think, process, speak, and understand things is not going to just automatically translate to every other field. It just isn't. If I am going to speak with a local farmer about agriculture laws, you might want to use your down south talk for that. You're not going to want to use all of the $50 words and all of the words you've learned throughout your entire time in law school. You're just not going to. That's going to be a huge turnoff. It's going to come across as condescending. And so I think that you should make sure you're able to be a bit more flexible and adaptable. And that's the only way that we will be able to kind of come together and bridge those gaps. I think that oftentimes people look at lawyers as a last resort or a, means to an end, just something that they've got to go through to get whatever it is they need, because a lot of times people don't like dealing with lawyers. And I think that a lot of that has to do with our approach and how we handle ourselves in certain situations. Most places I go, people do not know I'm a lawyer. And it's by design. I do not immediately tell people that I'm a lawyer. I do not introduce myself. Hi, I'm attorney Kymberly Porter. Unless I'm at work, I'm not doing, that's crazy. My mama named me Kymberly. Hi, I'm Kymberly. That's it. Because being an attorney is what I do. It's not who I am. And so if you can start to show up more as who you are rather than what you do, people will be more receptive to that. And I just don't think that enough attorneys do that. Now, obviously, I think that that's because for some people, being an attorney is who they are because it's all they got going. And that sucks. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for those people. But really and truly, you've got to dig a little bit deeper and be more than just your title, more than just your accomplishments or achievements or what have you, and just be you. And if you truly care about people within the other fields and the ways that you can help to serve those people, that's going to shine through. And to me, that will help to bridge that gap.
I commend you for being humble and giving people grace.
I
will not.
Tiana, I know you ain't doing it. It's okay. It's okay.
Okay.
I know you are eating them up every time you get, every single chance you get. Snap, 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 snap. Ate them up. I know.
Shoal is proud of it. All right. The solution. Now let's talk about all of these wonderful things that you do to help us dumb law students be like you. Okay, so what inspired you to start the Porter Solution and offer law school coaching services?
Couple of things. I'll say, and it's a difficult thing to answer because I can tell you what inspired me to start coaching law students, and then I can also tell you what inspired me to start charging people for it, because those two aren't the same. Yeah. And they didn't happen at the same time. I started tutoring law students literally my second semester in law school. Once I realized that for whatever reason, my brain understands certain things that other people's don't, and I am gifted to be able to explain one concept in many different ways. Once I realized that, I was like, oh, well, yeah, let me help y'all out. Like, you don't get it, I got you. Like, because for me, it was very important to me that my friends also understood. And yes, I know law school is super competitive and everybody wants to be at the top. And I am an advocate for being at the top, for sure, but not at all at the expense of being an unkind person. I just can't. I just can't. Not only that, but I don't think you gain anything by hoarding knowledge and not telling anybody anything at any point. And the reason I say that is because you and I can gain the same knowledge, but that does not mean that you'll perform better on the final exam than I do. That does not mean that you'll retain that knowledge. That does not mean that you'll truly understand it the way that I understand it. And so if you don't understand the concept and I tell you about the concept, that's no skin off my nose. It doesn't bother me whatsoever, because I know that if I understand it to the point where I can explain it to you, I understand it way better than you do. And I'll remember having explained it, and I'll do better on the final exam. So it does not bother me. If it was a danger for us to all get the same information, all having the same case books and same lectures would be a problem. But it ain't, because our minds all work differently. And so for me, sharing knowledge, sharing understanding was never an issue. And so that's why second semester of law school, I'm helping my classmates because they didn't get it and I did. So, just helping them out. And from there, it went to my second year. Now I'm helping 1Ls and still some of my classmates, and so on and so forth until I graduated. And once I graduated, when people that I had previously gone to school with were still sending me students to help, and I was no longer in law school, I was like, okay, this is a thing now. Like, people are just gonna keep referring people to me. Okay. And I happened to be talking to a friend of mine about it, and she is she is the most business-minded person that I know. She just is. And I've always told her that. I've always told her she's incredibly fiscally minded. We have known each other since we were 9, and literally the most responsible 9-year-old you'll ever meet. Like, she's saving her little $20 allowance forever. Like, she just is. And so we were talking about it, because she was beginning a consulting business where she consulted with businesses about financial advice, essentially. And we were just talking, and I was like, well, that's so cool. You got your, another stream of income. And she was like, yeah, you could do it. I was like, nah, what? No, I should not tell anyone anything about their business. She's like, no, not that. She was like, you tutor people. People will pay you for that, right? Like, what? What you mean? Really? And it was kind of at that moment that I realized that what I had been doing for free for years was actually something that could be profitable. And so that's kind of how the Porter solution began, is because I realized that something that I had already been doing was something that people wanted, needed, and would pay for.
So, what are some of the most common issues or struggles you see 1L students facing?
I'll say the most common is they thought they knew, but they had no idea. Like, they really thought they had some sort of inkling as to what they were about to step into, but they really and truly had no idea. And then they're drowning. Law school is like drinking from a fire hydrant. Like, it is just like you're being waterboarded most of the time. And until you learn how to control the waterboarding, you feel like you're dying. You're not actually dying, but you sure feel like it, And so starting out, being able to help with that feeling of being waterboarded, and being able to, I control the stream for them until they are able to learn how to control that stream. And so what that normally looks like is me reassuring them and going through things with them on a week-to-week basis until they realize how they need to control their own information intake, if that makes sense. And so that would be the biggest thing, is just the overwhelm and trying to comprehend and retain something while also being submerged in it, it's just one of those things. It's not an easy task.
Mhm. Now, you offer a success accelerator, to help people who want to sort of get a glimpse and just really get guidance on where to go. But for those that aren't as proactive, what if that student isn't performing well and then they come to you? How do you help rebuild their confidence and get them back on track?
So for the most part, if they're not doing well, they just got to borrow some of my confidence. It's one of those situations where even if you don't believe that you've got it, you got to believe that I've got it because you paid me to have it. And so I've definitely got it. And now we've got to work through and make sure you've got it. I can definitely do that. It's just a matter of an assessment of where they are and where they need to go. Now, depending upon at what point during the semester they come to me, that's when I give them whatever the assessment is. And I don't lie to people. I just don't. Like, it's not within me to do. I don't fake the funk. I don't sugarcoat. And so I will flat out tell someone, look, you ain't got but 3 days before this final. This is what you need to do. And maybe you'll come out decent. I'm not going to pretend like, oh, you've met me and now you'll get an A. That's ridiculous. Absolutely not. Instead, we're going to do the best we can with what we got. And you're going to start off better next semester. But first, we got to get you to next semester. And so oftentimes that's where I am with students. And it is normally when they have waited and waited and waited, and then they're freaking out right before finals, and they're like, hey, can I just get an hour session? You got one or more of them hour sessions? Like, because after a certain point in the semester, I don't even sell packages anymore because it's not fair to the student to purchase a package and they're not going to have the full semester. And so what I end up doing most times is just selling them hourly sessions for whatever amount of time they have left. Or if they are literally in their reading week, then we will schedule sessions based on what they need and what they have time for. And that's what we kind of do from there.
Okay. So let's talk about all of these different things that you offer. You have your accelerators, you have your packages. Let's go through those.
Sure. So I'll say that my packages, I have 3 packages that I offer, and the main difference in those packages is how much time you get with me. The top package gets you the most time, obviously. That package comes with an hour and 15-minute weekly calls and also 8 hours of finals prep at the end of the semester and 3 hours of academic success training at the beginning of the semester. Now, for the students who either are in their second semester, second year, third year, what have you, and don't necessarily need the academic success training, or they've completed the success accelerator and don't need the success training, what we end up doing is just putting that on the end of the package. And so they end up with 12 hours of final prep rather than the 8. And it is very similar for the mid-range package and my accountability package as well. The mid-range package has an hour weekly calls, and it has 6 hours of finals prep at the end, an hour and a half of academic success training. And it's the same process that gets flipped to the end, and then it ends up being 7.5 hours. And then that accountability package is an hour weekly sessions and 2 hours of finals prep. Now, another difference is that with the top package, there is a bi-weekly outline review where essentially what I do is not only make sure that the student is completing their outlines, but that their outlines are accurate and that they are not missing anything. There aren't any holes, that they are a complete statement of the law, and that they fit what that student needs in order to study properly. And that is done bi-weekly. For the mid package, it is going to be a monthly review, and there's no review for the accountability package because it is just that. That package is just for someone who just needs that accountability. They just need that weekly check-in to make sure they're on the right track, and a couple hours at the end to kind of sew everything up.
Okay.
So those are my packages.
Okay, and you said that at a certain point you stop offering the packages because it's just too late. So when is that? If someone's just like, okay, it's week 9, I am drowning, and they finally want help, is there still time to save them?
There is time. Most times there's time. Obviously, it depends on truly what that student knows. I will be honest. I've definitely encountered some students who it is literally right before their finals, and they really and truly don't know stuff, like big stuff. Because what I do as just a quick assessment before I start teaching anything, I just do a quick assessment, and I'll just ask them, depending on what the class is. Like, let's say if we're talking about civil procedure, I'll just say, okay, well, Tiana, tell me what you know about personal jurisdiction. Tell me what you know about in personam jurisdiction. Okay, tell me what you know about venue. And literally just let them, off the top of their head, give me their best whatever they know. And it's not asking for anything to be formalized. You don't have to put it in a rule statement. You don't have to have it in any certain format. It's literally just, what information do you have in your brain on this topic? Because that's where we've got to start. We've got to make sure you've got the information. Once you've got the information, then I can teach you how to put it on paper and make it good. But you got to have the information first. And so it really depends on what each student knows. I would say by week 9, we're definitely pressing up against time. If you got anything, I would say if you have 10 weeks or less remaining, I probably would not sell you a package. Rather, I would do an hourly session, depending on how many hours you would like to meet per week to get you caught up. And then as far as finals prep, what you might need for finals prep. And so that's generally what I do.
Okay. Is there anything else that I might have missed as it pertains to the Porter solution? Anything that you want anybody else to know in terms of, working with you?
Probably just to kind of go back to what we mentioned earlier, is that I start all of my students, I start them all off learning what their learning style is, and then everything else is catered to that, whether it be the way that I tutor them, the supplements that I suggest that they use, or even the study techniques that I tell them to use on their own. Though that's kind of how that goes. And so it is just one of those things where it may be that flashcarding is, I know that flashcarding works well for a particular student. So then now on our calls, I'm going to be asking you, okay, well, how many flashcards did you do? How many did you create? How many did you get through? Okay, let's run through those flashcards real quick. Like, that's a thing because I know it's your thing. And so it just, that learning style really and truly does impact the way that we work together. And not only that, but it's also important to know that the weekly sessions for each student is that student's session, which means whatever that student needs within that session is what the student gets. Sometimes the sessions are just flat out substantive law, and I'm teaching for the whole hour and 15. Sometimes the student is having a full-on comma part, and now I'm a therapist for the hour and 15. Sometimes it is, hey, I've got this legal research assignment that I've got to get in, and I have no idea where to start. And we're working through that together for that session. It really and truly just depends on what each student needs for their sessions. And that's what we do. I've even done OCI prep and mock interviews during sessions. It really and truly just depends on the student, where they are, what they need. And that's what truly dictates how that call goes. And so that's probably very important for students to know. It's just my level of flexibility as it relates to that.
Perfect. So, with that said, if you need a 12th ranked top tier prosecutor slash professor slash law coach, please visit theportersolution.com.